The first snowfall in Boulder Creek. Colorado always brought out the worst in my homeowners association president. And this year was no exception when I found a bright orange violation notice taped to my front door at 7 in the morning. I stood there in my bathrobe, coffee mug steaming in the freezing air, reading the citation with growing disbelief. According to Patricia Hendricks, president of the Meadowbrook Estates HOA, I had committed a grievous violation by shoveling snow from my driveway onto my front lawn. The fine was $250, payable within 10 days. My name is Quinn Robertson, and I had lived in this subdivision for 3 years without major incident. Sure, there had been minor disagreements about the height of my grass or the color of my mailbox, but nothing like this. I looked at my front yard, where small piles of snow sat harmlessly on the frozen grass, exactly where any reasonable person would put snow after clearing their driveway. The notice cited Section 17.4 of the HOA covenant, which apparently stated that snow removal must not result in damage to landscaping or create unsightly accumulations on visible lawn areas. I read it 3 times, trying to understand how anyone could consider this a violation. The snow was going to melt in a few days anyway. I called the HOA office as soon as it opened at 9. A cheerful voice answered, belonging to Melissa, the part-time administrative assistant who always seemed apologetic about everything the board did. "Hi, Quinn," she said, recognizing my number. "I am guessing this is about the citation." "You guessed right. Where exactly am I supposed to put the snow if not on my own lawn? Hold on, let me get Patricia for you." The hold music was a tinny version of some classical piece I did not recognize. After 2 minutes, Patricia's clipped voice came through the speaker. "Mr. Robertson, I assume you received your violation notice." "I did, and I am calling to appeal it. This is ridiculous. Everyone puts snow on their lawn." "Not everyone, Mr. Robertson. Several homeowners have invested in proper snow removal systems that dispose of snow appropriately. Others have hired professional services that take the snow away." "Take it away? Where do they take it? It's snow. It melts." "That is not my concern. What is my concern is maintaining property values and aesthetic standards in our community. The covenant is very clear." I pinched the bridge of my nose, feeling a headache forming. "Patricia, I have been shoveling snow onto my lawn since I moved here. Why is this suddenly a problem?" "The board voted last month to increase enforcement of existing rules. We have been too lax, and it shows. Property values in Meadowbrook Estates have remained stagnant while other developments have seen growth. We believe stricter adherence to community standards will help." "So this is about money?" "This is about community pride, Mr. Robertson. The fine stands. You have 10 days to pay, and I expect future snow removal to comply with regulations." She hung up before I could respond. I stood in my kitchen, staring at my phone, anger building in my chest. $250 for putting snow on my own grass. It was insane. I spent the next hour researching the HOA covenant and Colorado HOA law. The covenant did technically include the language Patricia cited, buried in a dense section about landscaping maintenance. However, Colorado law also granted homeowners certain rights regarding reasonable use of their property. The question was whether this enforcement was reasonable. My neighbor, Frank Morrison, knocked on my door around noon. He was a retired accountant in his 60s, someone I occasionally had beers with during Broncos games. "Saw the orange paper on your door this morning," he said, stomping snow off his boots. "Got one too." "Are you serious?" He pulled a folded citation from his jacket pocket. $250. For the same thing. I called to complain, and Patricia told me to consider it a lesson in following community guidelines. This is insane. How many others got cited? I have been texting around. At least 7 houses on our street alone, probably more throughout the development. I did quick math in my head. If 7 houses on one street got fined, and Meadowbrook Estates had 12 streets, that could be dozens of violations. At $250 each, Patricia's little enforcement campaign could net thousands for the HOA. We should fight this, I said. There has to be something we can do. Frank shrugged. HOA has lawyers. We signed the covenant when we bought our houses. I am just going to pay it and figure out another way to deal with snow. That is exactly what they are counting on. Everyone just accepting it because fighting seems too hard. Maybe. But I am retired and on a fixed income. I cannot afford to get into a legal battle with the HOA. They will just fine me for something else next month. After Frank left, I sat down and really read through the entire covenant document. It was 83 pages of dense legal language covering everything from fence heights to approved exterior paint colors. The snow removal section was vague enough to be interpreted multiple ways, which meant Patricia had some discretion in enforcement. But I also found something interesting. Section 31 covered HOA board responsibilities and limitations. Among other things, it stated that enforcement actions must be applied consistently and fairly to all residents. Selective or arbitrary enforcement could be grounds for challenging fines. I grabbed my camera and went for a walk through the neighborhood. It was a Wednesday afternoon and most people were at work. I walked every street in Meadowbrook Estates, photographing driveways and lawns. What I found was telling. Out of roughly 140 homes in the development, I counted 93 that had snow on their lawns from driveway clearing. However, only about 20 had orange citations visible on their doors. I made careful notes of addresses. More interesting was what I noticed about the homes that were cited versus those that were not. The pattern was not random. Houses on corner lots, which were more visible from main streets, were more likely to be cited. Homes where the owners were known to question HOA decisions had violations. My house, Frank's house, and the home of Dave Chen, who had argued about playground equipment at the last HOA meeting, all had citations. Meanwhile, Patricia's next-door neighbor had a massive pile of snow on his front lawn, easily twice the size of mine. No citation. The home 3 doors down from Patricia belonged to another board member, Karen Sutherland. Her driveway was clear, snow piled on the grass. No citation. This was selective enforcement, which according to the covenant was prohibited. I had the beginning of a defense. That evening, I drafted a formal appeal letter citing the inconsistent enforcement and requesting a hearing before the full HOA board. Colorado law required HOAs to provide such hearings before imposing fines. I included photos documenting the discrepancies and specific covenant language about fair enforcement. I emailed it to the HOA office and copied all 5 board members. Then, I posted in the neighborhood Facebook group, asking if others who received citations wanted to join a group appeal. By morning, I had 17 responses. We met that Saturday at my house. Some people I knew, others I had only seen around the neighborhood. Everyone was frustrated, and several were genuinely angry about what they saw as a money grab by the HOA. I calculated it out, said Janet Pierce, who lived on Ridgeview Drive. If they fined everyone who has snow on their lawn right now, they would collect over $23,000. That is more than half their annual budget for landscaping and maintenance. Do we know what they plan to use the money for? Someone asked. The budget is public record, I said. I looked it up. They have not allocated the fine money to anything specific. It just goes into the general fund, which the board has discretion to spend. So Patricia can basically use it for whatever she wants, Frank said. Within limits, yes, but there is no oversight unless homeowners demand it. We spent 2 hours discussing options. Some people wanted to just pay and move on. Others wanted to fight. Eventually, we agreed on a coordinated strategy. All 17 homeowners would submit appeals citing selective enforcement. We would request a joint hearing. And if the board rejected our appeals, we would consider legal action as a group, which would split costs and make it more affordable. I volunteered to be the primary contact person and to present our case at the hearing. Everyone agreed, probably because I was the one angry enough to dedicate time to it. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday evening at the community center. In the meantime, we got another significant snowfall, about 6 inches overnight. I woke up Tuesday morning facing a decision. If I cleared my driveway and put snow on the lawn, I would likely get another citation. But I needed to get to work. That is when I had my idea. Instead of shoveling the snow onto the lawn in the usual scattered piles, I would pile it deliberately and carefully. If they wanted to fine me for snow on grass, I would give them something worth complaining about. I would build something the community could actually use. I spent 3 hours that morning shoveling, but not just clearing the driveway. I moved snow from the driveway onto the front lawn in a specific pattern. My property had a slight natural slope from the sidewalk up to the house, maybe 15 degrees, perfect for what I had in mind. I created a long, smooth sledding hill, packing the snow firmly and shaping the sides. I used extra snow from the sidewalk and even scooped some from the lawn itself to build up the base. The hill started near the sidewalk and ran about 30 feet up toward my house, with a gentle curve at the bottom for a runoff area. By the time I finished, it was almost noon and I was exhausted. But the result was impressive. It looked intentional and well constructed, not just random snow piles. A few neighbors came out to watch as I put the finishing touches on it. "What are you doing?" asked Sarah Mitchell from across the street. "Building a sledding hill." "If Patricia wants to fine me for putting snow on my grass, I might as well make it worth the fine," she laughed. "Can my kids use it?" That is the idea. Community amenity free of charge. Word spread quickly. By mid-afternoon, several kids from the neighborhood were testing out the hill with sleds and snow tubes. Parents stood in clusters on the sidewalk, watching and chatting. Some brought coffee and hot chocolate. The hill became an impromptu gathering spot. I added some improvements over the next few days. I built up the sides to create a clear lane. I packed the snow down more firmly so it would last longer. I even set up some hay bales at the bottom for safety, though the runoff area made them mostly decorative. The hill was a hit. Kids came after school every day. Parents brought younger siblings on weekends. Someone created a Facebook event called Snow Hill at Quinn's, and over 50 people marked themselves as interested. Local kids who did not even live in Meadowbrook Estates started showing up. Patricia noticed, of course. 4 days after I built the hill, I got another citation. This one was for $500 and cited multiple violations. Creating an unauthorized recreational structure without HOA approval, operating an attractive nuisance, increasing foot traffic beyond residential norms, and my personal favorite, running an unauthorized business on residential property. I was not running a business. Everything was free, and I had not asked for or accepted any money. But Patricia's citation claimed that by attracting people to my property, I was effectively operating a commercial recreational facility. It was absurd enough that a local reporter heard about it. Emma Rodriguez from the Boulder Creek Gazette called me for an interview. I explained the situation, showed her the original citation and the new one, and walked her through my evidence of selective enforcement. "This is a great story," she said, taking photos of kids sliding down the hill. "HOA overreach is always popular with readers. Mind if I attend your hearing next week? Please do. The more witnesses, the better." Her article ran 3 days before the hearing under the headline "Local HOA Fines Homeowner for Sledding Hill. Neighbors Rally in Support." It was fair and factual, presenting both the HOA's position and mine. Patricia declined to be interviewed, but the article included a statement from the HOA's lawyer about the importance of covenant enforcement. The article got picked up by a Denver news station, and suddenly, I was doing a brief phone interview for their evening broadcast. The story played as a light human interest piece, the kind of feel-good neighborhood conflict that makes for good TV without being too heavy. The attention changed things. Suddenly, this was not just a neighborhood dispute. It was public. People had opinions. The HOA's Facebook page got flooded with comments, mostly critical of the fines. The Meadowbrook Estates page became a battleground between people who supported strict covenant enforcement and those who thought the HOA was being ridiculous. Patricia tried to do damage control by posting a long statement about property values and community standards, but it only made things worse. People pointed out the selective enforcement. Others noted that the Sledding Hill was bringing the community together in a way the HOA never had. The night before the hearing, I prepared my presentation. I had photos, documentation, copies of the covenant with relevant sections highlighted, and a list of inconsistencies in enforcement. I also had a petition signed by 73 residents supporting the Sledding Hill and opposing the fines. The hearing was scheduled for 7 in the evening at the community center's main room. I arrived 15 minutes early and found the parking lot already full. Inside, every seat was taken, and people lined the walls. The local news station had sent a cameraman. Emma from the Gazette sat in the front row with her notebook. The HOA board sat at a table facing the audience. Patricia in the center, flanked by Karen Sutherland, Tom Bradley, Michelle Foster, and Robert Yamamoto. They looked uncomfortable with the crowd size. Patricia called the meeting to order and explained the procedure. I would have 15 minutes to present my appeal. The board would ask questions. Then they would deliberate and announce their decision. I stood and walked to the podium they had set up. My hands shook slightly, but my voice was steady when I began. "Good evening. My name is Quinn Robertson, and I am here to appeal 2 citations issued by the HOA. The first was for $250 for placing snow on my lawn while clearing my driveway. The second was for $500 for building a sledding hill with that snow." I pulled up my first slide on the laptop, connected to their projector. It showed my house with the original small snow piles. This was the condition that triggered the first fine. Snow from my driveway, placed on my lawn, where it would melt naturally within days. According to the citation, this violated Section 17.4 of the Covenant regarding landscaping maintenance. Next slide, showing multiple other houses with similar or larger snow piles. These are examples from throughout Meadowbrook Estates, taken the same day I received my citation. 93 homes had snow on their lawns. 20 received citations. The pattern of enforcement was not random. I showed photos of board members' homes and their neighbors, none of which were cited despite clear violations. I showed corner houses that were cited while mid-block houses with the same conditions were ignored. Section 31.7 of our covenant states that enforcement must be consistent and applied fairly. This was selective enforcement, which violates our own rules. Patricia tried to interrupt, but I continued. After receiving the first citation, I decided that if I was going to be fined for snow on my lawn, I would create something useful for the community. I built a sledding hill. It is safe, supervised when children are present, and has brought neighbors together. I showed photos of kids playing, families gathering, and people smiling. The audience murmured approvingly. The second citation claims I am operating an unauthorized business. I charge nothing. I accept no money. Parents supervise their own children. This is simply neighbors sharing a fun winter activity, which is exactly the kind of community spirit HOAs are supposed to encourage. I went through each specific violation in the second citation, explaining why it was either factually wrong or an unreasonable interpretation of covenant language. I referenced Colorado HOA law regarding reasonable use of property and cited 2 court cases where similar overreach had been struck down. Finally, I want to address the real issue here. This is not about snow on lawns or sledding hills. This is about the board using selective enforcement to generate revenue and exert control. The selective nature of the citations, the timing, and the amounts all suggest this is a money grab, not legitimate covenant enforcement. I presented financial documents showing the HOA's budget and how the fine revenue was unallocated. I am asking the board to rescind both citations, to commit to consistent enforcement of all rules, and to revise Section 17.4 to provide clear, reasonable guidelines for snow removal that respect homeowners' property rights. I sat down. The room was silent for a moment, then several people started clapping. Patricia banged a gavel she had brought for some reason. Order. This is not a public forum for commentary. She turned to me with an expression that could freeze water. Mr. Robertson, your presentation raises several points, but it fundamentally misunderstands the board's authority and responsibility. We have broad discretion in enforcement decisions. The fact that we did not cite every violation does not make our citations invalid. We are entitled to prioritize visible violations that impact property values. Then why was the home next to yours not cited? I asked. It is on a corner lot, highly visible, and has more snow than mine. That homeowner reached out proactively to discuss the situation. We worked with him to develop a remediation plan. I received no offer to develop a remediation plan. I received a fine. Because you have a history of challenging board authority, Mr. Robertson. The room erupted. People shouted questions and objections. The news camera captured everything. Patricia realized too late that she had just admitted on record that the citation was retaliatory. What I mean, she said, trying to recover, is that homeowners who cooperate with the board typically receive warnings before fines. Your confrontational approach warranted immediate enforcement. The covenant does not provide for different treatment based on attitude, I said. Either everyone gets warnings first or no one does. Anything else is discriminatory. Tom Bradley, one of the other board members, leaned toward his microphone. I think Quinn has a point about consistency. Patricia, did we issue warnings to other homeowners before citing them? We do not need to discuss internal board processes publicly, Tom. Actually, we do, said Robert Yamamoto from the end of the table. This is a hearing. We are supposed to consider the evidence and make a fair decision. And I am looking at these photos Quinn provided. My house is in one of them. I had snow on my lawn and I was not cited. Patricia's face turned red. You are a board member. Obviously, we are not going to cite board members for minor violations. Then the rule is not being enforced fairly, Robert said. I move that we rescind both citations against Quinn Robertson and suspend enforcement of Section 17.4 until we can revise it with community input. I second that motion, Tom Bradley said immediately. Patricia looked like she had swallowed something bitter. "We need to discuss this in executive session, not in front of an audience." "No, we do not," Robert said. "This is a hearing on Quinn's appeal. We heard the evidence. I called for a vote." "Unless you want to violate meeting procedures in addition to everything else, we need to vote now." Michelle Foster, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "I vote yes on Robert's motion. This has gotten out of hand." "I also vote yes," Tom said. Patricia looked at Karen Sutherland, her usual ally, but Karen was staring at the table. "Karen," Patricia demanded, "I abstain. I think we need legal advice before proceeding." "The motion passes 3-0 with one abstention," Robert said. "Both citations are rescinded." "Quinn, you will receive written confirmation within 3 business days." The audience applauded. Patricia stood abruptly. "This meeting is adjourned." She walked out while people were still clapping, Karen hurrying after her. The remaining board members stayed to talk with residents, and several people came up to thank me. Emma from the Gazette caught me on the way out. "Great outcome. How does it feel?" "Honestly, exhausting, but good. This should not have been necessary." "Will you keep the sledding hill?" "As long as the snow lasts. It has been great for the neighborhood." Her follow-up article the next day was titled "Community Rallies. HOA Backs Down on Sledding Hill Fine." It detailed the hearing and quoted several residents who praised the outcome. The Denver station did another segment, this time playing up the happy ending angle. But I knew Patricia would not let this go. People like her did not accept defeat gracefully. I was right. 2 weeks later, after the snow had melted and the sledding hill was just a memory, I received a new citation. This one claimed my mailbox was not in compliance with approved colors. The fine was $100. I took a photo of my mailbox, which was dark green, and checked the covenant. Dark green was listed as an approved color. I checked the list of actually approved specific colors, and my exact shade, forest green, was on it. I emailed Patricia with the documentation. She responded that the approval list had been updated and forest green was no longer approved. I needed to repaint the mailbox navy blue or black within 30 days or face additional fines. I checked the meeting minutes. No board meeting had approved changes to the color list. When I pointed this out, Patricia claimed it was an administrative update that did not require a vote. This was harassment, plain and simple. She was looking for any excuse to fine me, regardless of whether I was actually in violation. I was not the only one. Frank got cited for having a basketball hoop in his driveway, despite the fact that dozens of houses had basketball hoops. Dave Chen got cited for visible trash cans, even though his cans were in the same location they had been for 5 years. Patricia was targeting people who had opposed her at the hearing. It was petty, vindictive, and probably illegal. I consulted with a lawyer who specialized in HOA disputes. Her name was Nina Kowalski, and she had handled several cases against overreaching associations in Colorado. "You have a good case for harassment," she said after reviewing my documentation. "The pattern is clear. The question is whether you want to pursue it legally. It will cost money and take time." "What are my options?" "You could sue individually for harassment and seek an injunction against further retaliatory enforcement. Or you could try to recall the board, which requires a petition signed by 20% of homeowners and a special election. The recall route is cheaper but takes longer." "What if we do both? Sue for immediate relief while pursuing recall to fix the underlying problem?" She considered this. "It is aggressive, but it could work. The lawsuit would show you are serious, and the recall would give other homeowners a way to participate without individual legal risk." I discussed it with Frank, Dave, and several others who were being targeted. We decided to move forward with both strategies. Nina filed a lawsuit on behalf of 4 of us who had the clearest harassment cases. Simultaneously, we started a petition to recall Patricia and Karen, who was still supporting her despite the growing discontent. The petition required signatures from at least 28 homeowners, 20% of the 140 households. We had that within 4 days. By the end of 2 weeks, we had 71 signatures, over half the community. The recall election was scheduled for 6 weeks out, per the covenant's procedures. In the meantime, the lawsuit moved forward. Nina filed for a temporary restraining order preventing the HOA from issuing any new citations to the 4 plaintiffs until the case was resolved. The judge granted it, noting that the pattern of enforcement suggested retaliatory intent. That was a significant win, even though it only protected 4 of us. Patricia responded by ramping up enforcement against everyone else. Suddenly, people were getting cited for things that had never been problems before. Dead plants in flower pots, grass slightly over the 2.5-inch height limit, Christmas lights left up past January 15th. It backfired spectacularly. Instead of scaring people into compliance, it united the community against her. More homeowners joined the lawsuit. The recall petition got 40 more signatures. Local media covered the story as an example of HOA overreach gone wild. The Colorado State Legislature was actually considering new HOA reform laws that session, and our case got mentioned in committee hearings as an example of why reform was needed. A state representative from a neighboring district contacted me to discuss the specifics for potential legislation. Things came to a head at the recall election meeting. It was held on a Saturday morning at the community center, and the turnout was incredible. Over 100 homeowners showed up, the highest attendance for any HOA meeting in Meadowbrook Estates history. The procedure was straightforward. There would be brief statements from Patricia and Karen defending their positions, then from 2 residents who supported the recall. After that, a vote by secret ballot. Patricia's statement was defiant. She argued that the board had been enforcing rules that homeowners had agreed to, and that the backlash was simply from people who did not want to follow the rules. She claimed property values would suffer if enforcement became lax. Karen mostly echoed Patricia's points, though she seemed uncomfortable and her heart was not in it. Then I spoke for the recall side. Enforcing rules is important, but enforcement has to be fair, consistent, and reasonable. What we have seen over the past few months is none of those things. It has been selective, retaliatory, and designed to generate revenue rather than actually maintain community standards. That is not leadership. That is abuse of power. I kept it short. The facts spoke for themselves, and everyone knew the story by now. The vote took 20 minutes to complete and count. When the results were announced, it was not even close. 84% voted to recall Patricia. 76% voted to recall Karen. They were out. The remaining board members, Robert, Tom, and Michelle, became the interim leadership. They immediately announced several reforms. All pending citations issued in the past 3 months would be reviewed for fairness. The color approval list would be restored to the previous version. Section 17.4 about snow removal would be revised with community input. Most importantly, they committed to transparent enforcement with clear warnings before fines, applied consistently to everyone. The lawsuit was settled a month later. The HOA agreed to rescind all citations that had been part of the harassment campaign, reimburse legal fees, and implement written enforcement procedures to prevent future abuse. The settlement also required annual board training on fair housing and association management. Patricia and Karen both resigned completely, not just from the board but from any HOA involvement. Patricia moved out of Meadowbrook Estates 6 months later, selling her house in what was apparently a contentious divorce. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that the HOA drama had been a contributing factor in her marriage problems, though I did not follow up on the details. The community held special elections to fill the 2 empty board seats. I was asked to run, but I declined. I had spent enough time dealing with HOA politics. Instead, 2 younger homeowners with project management backgrounds were elected, and they brought a more collaborative and professional approach to board operations. The next winter, when the first significant snow fell, I built another sledding hill. This time, I submitted a formal request to the HOA first, including safety measures and liability considerations. The new board approved it unanimously, and even shared the idea with the community, encouraging other homeowners with appropriate properties to do the same. 3 more sledding hills popped up in other parts of the neighborhood. The community organized a winter festival with hot chocolate, a snowman building contest, and races between the different hills. It became an annual tradition, something that actually brought property values up because families specifically looked for homes in Meadowbrook Estates due to the strong community connection. The state legislature did pass HOA reform that year. The new law required training for board members, established clearer standards for fair enforcement, and made it easier for homeowners to challenge unreasonable rules or fines. Our case was cited in the legislative history as an example of why the reforms were necessary. I learned several things from the whole experience. First, that standing up to bureaucratic overreach is exhausting but often necessary. Second, that communities are stronger when people work together instead of just accepting things they know are wrong. Third, that sometimes the best response to petty authoritarianism is to build something positive that brings people together. The sledding hill started as an act of defiance, a way to say that I would not be bullied into accepting unreasonable rules. But it became something more important, a symbol of what a neighborhood could be when people stopped worrying about arbitrary restrictions and started focusing on actually living together as a community. Frank and I still watch football together. Dave Chen and his family come over for barbecues in the summer. Emma from the Gazette became a friend, and she went on to do a whole series on HOA issues in Colorado that won some kind of journalism award. Nina, the lawyer, still handles HOA cases and occasionally refers clients to me for advice on dealing with difficult boards. The incident even had some unexpected benefits for my career. I work in software project management, and the skills I developed in organizing the community response, documenting evidence, and presenting a clear case turned out to be directly applicable. I got promoted 6 months later, partly because my manager was impressed by how I had handled the situation. Apparently, standing up to an abusive HOA demonstrated leadership skills. My new mailbox is painted dark green, the exact shade I had before. My driveway gets cleared every snowfall, and the snow goes right on my lawn where it belongs. No citations, no fines, no harassment. The HOA focuses on actual community needs, maintaining common areas, organizing neighborhood events, and handling legitimate problems. It is amazing what can happen when an organization actually serves its community instead of trying to control it. Every time I look out my front window in winter and see kids sledding down a snow hill, or in summer when neighbors gather for impromptu evening conversations, I think about how close we came to losing that. How easily a community can become a battleground when the wrong people get a little bit of power and decide to abuse it. But I also think about how quickly things can change when people decide they have had enough. 73 people signed that initial petition supporting the sledding hill. 71 signed the recall petition. Over 100 showed up to vote. That is the story that matters, not the story of one petty HOA president trying to collect fines. The sledding hill is gone now, melted away with the spring thaw like it does every year. But the community it helped create remains. And next winter, when the snow falls again, I will build it back, because that is what you do in a real community. You create things that bring people together, even if it starts with something as simple as a pile of snow on your front lawn. The whole experience taught me that the rules are not always right just because they are written down. That authority is not always legitimate just because it is official. And that sometimes the most important thing you can do is build a sledding hill and invite your neighbors to come play.